Hello, everyone. My name is Jack Meggitt Phillips, and I am the author of The Beast and the Bethany, Revenge of the Beast, and the brand new Battle of the Beast. It's a children's series about a young 500-year-old, a hungry beast, and a child who's going to be eaten. Today, we're here to talk about the Biblio-buzz Alexandra Palace Children's Book Award, and I am over the Colony Moon to be joined by one of the shortlisted authors, Alastair Chisholm. Woo! Well, I will rave and generally woohoo about The Consequence Girl in a moment because it got me out of a real reading slump, so thank you for that. But for anyone who hasn't read The Consequence Girl, how would you describe it?
So it's a science fiction adventure, and it's all about a girl living out in the absolute wilds of nowhere with her guardian, and it turns out that she's got an amazing ability. She can actually change time. She can change how the world has turned out. And she is getting hidden away, but some people are out to get her. And soon she's on the run with her guardian, and she meets all sorts of people. And some of them she can trust, some of them she can't trust, and she's got to figure it all out. And in the end, she's got to decide what she's actually going to do with her power. So she can change the world. How is she going to change it?
Yes. Oh no, it's such a fantastic concept. It's what I really loved is how it's sort of on the one level a very sort of personal story of this young teenager coming to grips with both her powers and I suppose her place in the world. But it's also got this really lovely sort of expansive reach. I mean, Colony, where the book is set, is sort of like an apocalyptic aftermath of the rise and fall of an empire, and it just seems so sort of well realized. I was wondering, how did you go about sort of creating the new world of Colony?
Hmm. Well, usually what happens is it's quite often there's one scene that just sticks in my head, and that's the thing that kicks everything off. In this case, it was Cora, the main character. She's standing on the side of a hillside. It's very snowy, it's very white, it's very, very quiet, and she's just looking across, and you can just see a sort of civilization off in the far distance. And for some reason, that scene absolutely stuck in my head, and then I started to ask myself, why is she there? Why can't she join the civilization? Why are they hiding? And then her power sort of appeared to me, because I was, sometimes you're looking at the news and you're thinking this is actually a bit depressing.
Yes.
Sometimes there are events going on, and I was thinking about this idea that, what if you could change things, and what if you could go back? And so the whole book started to become about this idea of, what if you really could do that? What if you actually could change things, and what would you do? And it became about these people, all of whom have sort of in some way had some loss or something that's gone wrong, and they're all trying to deal with it. But because I really love adventure stories and things exploding and lots of chases and things like that, that was my spin on that idea.
Yeah.
So it was all about that. Yeah, sorry. So it was all about that thing. What if you could change the world? And that drove everything from there.
Yes. And did you have a moment when that scene? Do you remember when that scene popped into your head, or was it just sort of a gradual? Do you see the mountains first and then?
It's usually first thing in the morning. I'm sort of
Oh,
half
okay.
awake, and it's been the same almost with all my books.
Really?
I'm lying there, and then suddenly there's one thing, and it just pops into my head, and then it just nags and nags at me for the rest of the day, and I'm sort of half awake, half asleep, and I'm going, what can I do with that? But
Yes.
Cora, I saw Cora right away, and she just popped into my head completely fully formed, and she didn't change during the whole book, which is wonderful.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I'm
Mm.
incredibly jealous of you. I mean, first thing in the morning, I'm normally just swearing and throwing things at the alarm clock. So the fact that you're having a fully realized character just seems unfair, frankly. But
I'm terribly sorry. Yeah.
yeah, no. Yes, I'll be seething about it for the rest of the week. And so, what you're talking about, the sort of the themes of the book, I think you put it really well. I love the acknowledgements of the books. I'll just read the end of it. You say, so the quote at the start of this book comes from Thomas Paine. We have it in our power to begin the world over again, and not by magic or superpowers, but by believing that we can make a difference. We all have power. We just have to use it. We can't change the past, but we can fix the future. I think the book's got this really lovely message. So how early, sort of, so you had the scene in your head. When did you realize that the book was about this, or was it just sort of like pulling at the threads and it came to you?
That was a pulling at the threads, because for a
Yeah.
while I wasn't sure what her power really was, and I went through a couple of options, and then and then I sort of started to get this idea, and I loved the idea of replaying. Cora can't really just go back and arbitrarily decide what she's going to change. She can see back in time. She can make a very minute change, and then she has to sort of wind it forward to see what would happen if she did that. And then she tries that hundreds and hundreds of times until she gets the one that she likes, and then the idea is she can fix that. So I liked that because it seemed a slightly different take on some of the sort of time travel ideas that you get, and because it starts very, very small to begin with. It's really just the ability to change a dice roll, and then it gets more and more powerful. So as her power developed and I realized what her power was about, the overall concept of fixing the future and dealing with the past came out from that. And also she's got a guardian called Celine, who's got quite a sort of dark past. And Celine's character, I fell completely in love with Celine. She's fantastic. She's incredibly tough and hardy, and her backstory and the sort of tragedy that she'd had in her backstory really, to me, drove the rest of the story, because she understood in some ways what the important thing was. Yeah.
Oh no, Celine is absolutely, a fantastic character, absolutely terrifying. I mean, I had a nightmare of facing her with her crossbow at some point. But I think the time travel, I love time travel stories. And often the hardest thing to get right is, I suppose, the rules of time travel, to sort of try and create peril when you've got a character who can, change time immediately. It's a bit like the Doctor Who rule of get rid of the TARDIS as quickly as possible, otherwise you're a bit stuck for the rest of the story. So was it when you started looking at time travel being Cora's power, how quickly did the limitations come through? Or was it a sort of
I knew it had to come through very, very early from the start. And to begin with, as I say, she's actually quite weak.
Yes.
She has this amazing ability, but she can't do very much with it. And it's only over time that she starts to understand. And to a certain extent, that's because she's being discouraged from knowing anything about it. And the reasons why are kind of the what the story's about. To an extent, but yeah. So as you say, you've got to do it because otherwise, it was all a dream. None of it happened, and,
yes.
and we're all sorted. And
and what I thought also, the rules of time travel and the structure of Colony itself, it's got such a lovely sort of TikTok of revelations. And then when I was, if you don't mind my admitting, sort of obsessively Googling you, I noticed that you're a bit of a puzzle creator as well. Does that help you plot stories, or does it feed into your writing in any other way, do you think?
I think I'm quite a geek. And, I'm a computer programmer.
You're in good company, so it's
excellent. So I mean, I did really sort of start with logic puzzles. That was one of the first books that I had, and I just loved solving them, and I loved thinking about how to solve them. And in many ways, it's the same idea when you're doing a puzzle like a Sudoku or something like that. It's got a lot of the same thing, because you get to a point where you just know what the answer is, and it just feels right. And you kind of get the same thing, I think, if you've got your plot right, if you've got your story right and your pace right, you get to the point where the reader goes, I understand now, and this all just feels right. And that's, of course, what you're really hoping for. You're thinking all the pieces are like clues, and it's only when they all come together that the reader thinks, yes, and they all make sense. So it's exactly the same feeling that you're sort of aiming for. I think.
Well, I think it comes through in the book. It's got such a lovely flow to it. Whereas, I'm a big fan of sci-fi fantasy books generally, and sometimes the problem is, you have a slightly clunky beginning where, okay, this is how the world works, and then the plot begins and it's great. But this one, I think because it really helps having Cora as the not knowing an awful lot about herself, so that she's sort of she's discovering the world as we are as well. One thing I really liked is how. And it almost felt quite a nice sort of antidote to, there are occasional Marvel films I like, but generally I think they're going off the ball a bit. But I thought it was really nice having her superpower being a real curse or affliction. It sort of puts a target on her head throughout the whole book, which I thought was nice. Was that something you wanted to do going into it, or was it? Yeah,
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
And again, it comes back to if they're too powerful, then they can.
Yes, I
Then
suppose. Yeah.
really there is no story, you know.
Yes.
So she's off balance, and
Mhm.
I was sort of trying to think of ways to keep her off balance. And as you say, you know, the world building, having her
Yeah.
introduce her to the world. Fortunately, I get my daughters to proofread a lot of my stuff to
Oh,
give
that's
her a
good.
first read
Yes.
through, which was
I've been looking for a reason, why should you have children? It's just to have free labor, basically. It's good. Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, if
Yes.
it's not market feedback, then really, what is the point? It's
Yes.
but so she'd read my first couple, and
Mhm.
that'd been very nice. And then the third book, she really for the Consequence Girl, I gave it to her, and then a few weeks later I said, "How'd you get on?" And she said, "Nah, I didn't really get very far." And
Oh, right. Oh,
I took a look,
I thought it
and
was going to be a really moving story, and she finished
no,
it in
no,
an
it
hour, but
wasn't.
no, I
No,
hate
no,
it.
no. No, but I took a look, and I realized I actually the version that's now out is a completely different start, almost the first sort of 5 or 6 chapters, because I realized I'd done exactly that. I'd done that clunky thing, and
Mm,
I found that really, it was really helpful to get that sort of
yes.
feedback. B, it was nice to know that I get complete honesty from my children, even if it's contempt, and see it. It's sort of interesting to know that it's always important to know that you can always change the story. You know, if it doesn't
Yes.
work, you're not stuck there. You can redo it, and the redone version, I was obviously much happier with. Yeah.
I do the same with my mother. I'm basically the main reason I call her is I sort of call her reading an opening chapter. And I did one recently, and she just let out such an audible yawn. Thought, right, okay, this is
Oh,
possibly not
oh.
not the most gripping beginning that I need. But that's very interesting. What were some of the other powers you considered for Cora at the beginning?
I was looking at ways in which she could. I was always considering ways in which she could change the world.
Okay,
So
yes,
some
yeah.
of the powers that I was thinking of were, thinking back, I had an idea that she could shift to similar worlds to ours.
Yeah.
A sort of multi-universe idea. She could shift to a world that was like ours, but something else had slightly done, and she could sort of search through the universes until she found one that was close. And I had ideas about her being able to sort of shift out of our world, sort of out of phase, and then come back in. In the end, I was really pleased with the power that she has, because
Mhm.
as I was saying earlier on, this whole idea of how do we deal with things that have gone wrong,
Yes.
and how we then sort of face up to them and fix the future, sort of worked out so well with her
Mhm.
power that I was really sort of pleased.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's it's going to be a terrible sort of misquote here, but there's and Neil Gaiman, when he's talking about writing, was saying, children's stories don't exist to tell you that monsters are there, but it's that monsters can be beaten. And I think this has got a real sort of without to spoil things down, but it's got a real sort of fist bump moment of thinking, actually, you know,
Oh,
you don't need to have Cora's gifts. You can, I had that feeling, admittedly, for about 10 minutes on the train, thinking, yes, I'm going to go out and change the world. And then got myself lunch, and suddenly
yeah.
all the enthusiasm seemed to. I thought, well, I'll do
You
it next
can
week.
you can change the world, Jack.
Yeah,
You can.
thank you. I'll stay strong. I've got some very silly questions for you now, but so Cora has the ability at the beginning to change anything that could happen in her life, subtle changes over the past 2 days. If you could change anything in the past 2 days, what would you change?
um, well, on Saturday I was feeling very positive, and then tipped about half a cup of coffee down my front,
Okay,
and
that'll do.
and yeah, and I won't lie to you, people saw that, so
Yes.
so I'd have to go back and change their history as well. So that would
Yes.
be the obvious
No, very good.
thing. Yeah.
And if you were like Cora at the beginning on a mountaintop, deserted, not
Mm.
even a co-op nearby, how long would you be able to survive on your own skills you've amassed?
Me, I about 25 minutes.
25 minutes.
Really,
Okay, that's
core.
oh good. I was thinking about it myself. I think I could probably do a day, and then I suppose hunger hits in, and
Yeah.
I
I
forgot
mean,
about the
I've got
bears.
I've
That
got
might be
4G, right? I've got
yes,
I can I
yeah.
can
So
connect with you.
of course.
Yeah.
Let's not.
So
No, we're not going to be complete savages.
yeah.
And if you could
Cora,
have
Cora
any,
is amazing, actually. Cora, when she goes out and hunts rabbits and things like that, and I had to look all this
yes.
stuff up. And
Well, to be honest,
she's
I was
she's
reading it. I was thinking,
really.
gosh, I wonder if well, I wonder if I'll be essentially zooming Bear Grylls, maybe by the end. But clearly not. Some
No,
excellent research there. So,
definitely.
and if you could have any power other than time travel, what would you go for?
Oh wow. I think probably I have too many books. No, I don't have too many books. I have not
Well,
enough
your
time to
power is
read
not going to
books.
be to
Uh,
burn books, is it?
no, no, my power would be to be able to basically sort of rewind the time that I've got after
Oh,
I finish
yes.
a book, so I could start another book because my to be read pile is a
Oh, okay.
teetering tower of
Yes.
books, and I just love to work through them. So that would probably be it.
That's a
Quite
very
boring.
and very on brand for Biblio-buzz. Yeah, almost heartwarming. But yeah, and speaking of Biblio-buzz, for the young children who'll be voting, I imagine some of them might want to become storytellers in the future. Do you have any advice for them on how they can create their own stories?
Keep going. Whatever it is you're doing, it is the single most useful bit of advice anybody's ever given to me, which is just do a little bit every day, but just don't stop. It will take a while, and it will be worth the effort. So keep going, keep going, keep going.
And final question will be: do you have a book that got you into reading when you were younger?
I do, yes. It is it
Oh,
is
that
this
is
book.
preparation to the next
I
degree.
know.
Wow.
Yeah, look at this. This book is called The Grey King. It's by Susan Cooper. It's part of a series called The Dark is Rising. And as you can see, I have read this book a lot. I read this book so much that the cover fell off.
My goodness, you're a
I,
monster. Jeepers.
yeah,
How violently do you read?
um, yeah, it's taken a fair bit of abuse. I've
Yes.
dropped this in the bath twice and had to fish it out and then hair dry it in order to repair it. It's a wonderful book. It's set in the Welsh mountains, and it's all about magic and adventures, and it's great. But it's fundamentally it's about a story which is driven by the adults themselves, by something that happened in their past. And this was really unusual at the time. Usually, adults in children's stories are really there just to either get in the way or to leave them alone. But in this case, it was the adults themselves had a sort of real effect of it, and it felt so real. And by the end of it, I I I'd realized that stories are about people, and fundamentally, this is the book that made me realize that stories are all about people. People are the key thing, and they could be aliens or robots or animals or anything like that. But people interacting is the whole point of stories. So this book is wonderful, and I would recommend it.
Oh, brilliant. Well, I shall be taking it out at the library at earliest convenience. So thank you very
Hmm.
much for your time, Alastair, and look forward to meeting you properly at the ceremony.
Yes, you too. Cheers. Thanks very much, Jack.
Yeah.